My name is Lauren Parker. I'm 28 years old, and a few nights ago my own mother walked into my room, put both hands on my desk, and literally shoved it away from the wall so my brother could move his camera setup in. She didn't yell. She didn't ask. She spoke like the decision had already been made, signed and sealed. We're giving this room to him for his studio. You can work in the basement. My brother stood in the doorway with his arms folded, watching my monitors go dark like it was some kind of show. He smirked and said, "You'll be fine down there, right? Less distraction." He said it like a joke, but every word landed exactly how he meant it. That room was my office. It was the space I had built piece by piece so I could work remotely as a designer and actually pay the bills that kept that house running. I looked at him, then at her, and all I said was, "Okay. No jelling. No scene." I packed my laptop, my hard drive, and whatever I could carry in one trip. I walked past them and straight down the stairs like I was heading to the basement, just like they wanted. They didn't know that when I said okay, what I really meant was, I'm done. That night, I moved out quietly. I changed more than just where my desk was. By the very next morning, the calls started. Then the texts. "We can't afford this without you. Please pick up." They called nonstop. Like suddenly I was the only person on earth who knew how to keep their lives from falling apart. If you've ever wondered what happens when the person a family takes for granted finally walks away, stay with me, because the way they begged me to come back might make you rethink how much you let people use you. Growing up, I always knew my family felt a little off balance, but I didn't understand how bad it was until money entered the picture. I was the kid who stayed up late finishing projects, color-coded my notes, and actually cared about grades. Ethan, my younger brother, was labeled sensitive and creative, which somehow meant the rules bent around him. When I got into a strong design program on a scholarship, my mom, Lynn, hugged me quickly in the kitchen and said, "That's great, honey. You always were responsible." When Ethan passed an online class he barely participated in, she ordered a custom cake from the bakery down the street and posted about it on Facebook like he'd cured a disease. I learned early not to expect applause when I did something right. After college, when rent in Manhattan was basically $3,000 a month for a closet with a sink, moving back to our Brooklyn place felt like the only financially sane option. I told myself it was temporary, just until I saved enough for my UX job and freelance work. What actually happened was I slowly became the household's unofficial bank, tech support, and problem solver, and nobody noticed the shift except me. It started small. Mom's paycheck came up short one month, and the electric bill was higher than usual, so I covered it. Then the Wi-Fi got upgraded so Ethan could stream without lag, and somehow the new plan ended up on my card. Then came Netflix, Spotify, the shared phone plan, extra groceries for all the takeout nights we called family time. I kept telling myself it was fine. I made more. This is what you do when you love people. But every time my card auto-renewed some subscription none of them could survive a week without. I felt that tight twist in my chest. When Ethan decided he was going to be a content creator, Mom announced it like a real career path, not a phase. "He just needs a little push," she said. "He has potential. He just needs support." Support meant I paid $600 for a TikTok creator course he never finished. Support meant I ordered ring lights and phone tripods from Amazon for his channel. Support meant waking up at 2 in the morning to fix the internet when it cut out during his late-night gaming streams, because he was testing setups. Meanwhile, my own work, the work that actually brought money in, happened quietly in the background. I turned that small top-floor room into a real office because no one else cared. I spent my savings on a proper desk, an ergonomic chair, a second monitor, a drawing tablet, and lighting so I didn't look half dead on client calls. I pinned wireframes to the walls, scribbled notes on sticky pads, and built an actual career in that space. That office was the difference between barely scraping by and landing better contracts, raises, and real clients. But whenever my mom talked about it, she'd say, "Len is lucky she can work from home." Lucky, like it all just happened to me, like I didn't drag myself there inch by inch. At the same time, she talked about Ethan like he was one viral video away from changing all our lives. She never asked how many hours I spent refining interfaces or fixing problems other people ignored. She only noticed when a bill was due and somehow, magically, it got paid. I kept a running list in my notes app just for myself. Rent I handed her every month. Utilities I covered when she fell short. Subscriptions I forgot I even signed up for, because everyone used them. Groceries. Takeout. Uber rides for her when she didn't feel like taking the subway. Uber rides for Ethan when he had some half-baked job interview he never actually went to. Every time I updated that list, the total at the bottom got worse. My mom called it family helping family. I started thinking of it as me quietly bleeding money so they could pretend everything was fine. The worst part was they genuinely believed they were the ones struggling the most. Ethan would sigh about how hard it was to make it as a creator while sitting in a room I paid to heat, scrolling through sneakers he wanted. Mom would complain about prices going up, and I would bite my tongue instead of pointing out that my name was on half the accounts keeping her life comfortable. I knew, logically, that I had allowed this to grow into what it was. I said yes too many times. I stepped in before they ever had to feel the consequences of their own choices. I smoothed every sharp edge, fixed every problem before it became real. And because I kept doing it, they assumed I always would. That was the dynamic. That was the script. Lauren will handle it. Lauren will pay for it. Lauren will fix it. I just never imagined they would push me out of the very room that made all of that possible. The night my mom forced me out of my own office, something inside me finally stopped making excuses for them and started asking the one question I had avoided for years. What would actually happen if I didn't handle it this time? That question wouldn't leave me alone. It followed me into the shower, into my sleep, into those quiet moments between meetings when my camera was off and my smile dropped. What would happen if I didn't fix it this time? That night, after my mom told me to take the basement, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, my laptop open but my Figma files untouched. Instead, I opened Zillow. I typed in Queen's Studio Max price and hit search, telling myself I was just browsing, just curious. The rent numbers still made my stomach tighten, but for the first time they didn't feel completely impossible. I had savings. Not a fortune, but enough. I scrolled past dark, depressing boxes and sketchy listings until one stopped me. A small studio in a quiet part of Queens, with a big window facing the street and just enough wall space for a desk and shelves. The photos showed sunlight spilling across hardwood floors and a tiny kitchen with white cabinets. It wasn't fancy, but as I swiped through the pictures, I could already see it. Where my monitor would sit. Where I'd tape up my wireframes. Where I'd put a plant and pretend I was the kind of person who remembered to water it. I checked the price 3 times. $2,200 a month. High but not unthinkable. When I added up what I earned and what I'd stopped bleeding out on everyone else, I stared at the total in my notes app, the same one tracking everything I'd poured into that house, and realized that in 1 year alone I had already paid the equivalent of several months of that studio, and had nothing to show for it that was actually mine. The next morning, I told my mom I had an early meeting at a client office in Queens. Technically, it wasn't a lie. Someone there really was about to decide my future. I took the train clutching a folder with my pay stubs and ID, my heart pounding like I was headed into an interview, when the landlord, an older woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense voice, opened the door. The place was even smaller than it looked online, but it was clean. It was quiet. And most importantly, it could be mine if I wanted it. We sat at the tiny counter that passed for a dining table, while she went over the lease. "You work from home?" she asked. I nodded. "UX designer. I just need good internet and space for a desk." She nodded like that made perfect sense. "We don't tolerate parties," she said. "No loud music. No drama." I almost laughed. That was exactly what I was trying to escape. When she slid the lease toward me, my hand shook for a moment. Every fear hit at once. What if the work dries up? What if this is irresponsible? What if your family hates you? Then one thought cut through all of it. They already treat you like you owe them your entire life, and they still didn't hesitate to push you out. I signed. I transferred the first month and the deposit. $6,600 gone with one click. It hurt, but it felt clean. This wasn't money disappearing into a bottomless pit of bills and excuses. This was me building something for myself. On the train ride back to Brooklyn, I kept touching the new key in my pocket, that small square of metal that meant I finally had a way out. When I walked through the door, Ethan was on the couch yelling into his headset at some game, plates from last night's takeout still on the coffee table. Mom stood at the kitchen counter scrolling on her phone, muttering about grocery prices. No one asked how my meeting went. No one noticed anything had changed. And honestly, that made what came next easier. I started small. That night when they asked what we should order for dinner, I said I'd already eaten. The next day when Mom texted me to add extra items to the grocery delivery, I replied, "I can't cover extras this week. My budget's tight." It was the first real no I'd said in years. There was a pause, then just a thumbs up emoji. When the Wi-Fi glitched during one of Ethan's streams, he stormed upstairs to what was technically still my office for a few more days. "Hey Lauren, can you reset the router? It's doing that thing again." I looked at my screen, at the prototype I was testing, and said without looking away, "I have a deadline. You can figure it out." He stood there like he'd never heard those words from me before, then muttered something and stomped back downstairs. The world didn't end. A few nights later, when Mom mentioned needing an Uber for an early shift because she didn't want to deal with the subway, I told her I couldn't put it on my account this time. Maybe ask Ethan or take the train. She looked at me like I'd switched languages. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You always help." I forced a smile and said I was just trying to be smarter with my money. It sounded casual, but inside it felt like ripping up an old script. Every no made the next one easier. Quietly behind the scenes, I started moving my life out of that house. First went my external hard drive with all my client work. Then my sketchbooks, my favorite pens, a stack of clothes that fit into a duffel bag. I told them I was decluttering, using a storage unit, leaving things with a friend. None of it was technically a lie. The storage unit just happened to be my new studio apartment. After my last meeting of the day, I stopped leaving my laptop on the desk and started slipping it into my backpack. One weekend I took my monitor down, saying it was acting weird and needed to be checked. Little by little, my office stopped feeling like mine and became just another room. They were too focused on Ethan's next content idea and my mom's overtime schedule to notice how empty the shelves were getting. Late at night, after they went to bed, I made quiet trips to Queens, carrying boxes down the stairs one load at a time so the steps wouldn't creak. Every time I unlocked that new door and stepped into the silent studio, my lungs felt like they opened a little wider. I'd set a box down, look at the bare walls and the echo of my footsteps, and think, this is where I stop being the person who fixes everything for everyone else first. I hadn't told them I was leaving yet. I wanted everything ready before I said the words. If my mom could decide I no longer deserved the space that funded their lives in a single conversation, then I could decide in silence that I was done funding it. By the time they officially turned my old office into Ethan's studio, with his cheap ring light and sneaker boxes piled in the corner, almost everything that mattered to me was already gone. What they really pushed out wasn't just a desk. It was the last leverage they had, and they didn't even realize it. Everything fully snapped a couple of weeks later. Most of my important things were already in Queens, but I was still sleeping in my old room, still pretending nothing had changed. One Saturday afternoon, I came home with a coffee and felt something was off as I passed what used to be my office. The door was open, light spilling out, Ethan's voice filling the room as he talked to his phone, testing angles. I stepped inside, and my eyes went straight to the empty space where my ergonomic chair used to be. In its place was a cheap folding chair from the basement, wobbling as Ethan adjusted his tripod. My stomach dropped. "Where's my chair?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer wouldn't be good. Ethan barely looked at me. "Mom sold it," he said. "We needed the money for my mic." The words hit harder than I expected. I walked straight into the kitchen where my mom was rinsing dishes like it was any other day. "Where is my chair?" I asked again. She didn't even look up at first. "Oh, that," she said. "I listed it on Facebook Marketplace. We got $250 for it. Ethan needed a proper microphone if he's going to take this seriously. We'll get you something else for the basement. That chair was overkill anyway." I just stared at her. That chair wasn't random furniture. I bought it with my bonus after my team shipped a major feature. I chose it after weeks of back pain, sitting on it in a showroom, imagining myself finally working like a real professional, instead of hunched over a kitchen table. You sold it, I said slowly, not even phrasing it as a question, without asking me. She shrugged and finally met my eyes with that familiar mix of confusion and irritation, like I was the unreasonable one. Lauren, it's just a chair. We share things in this house. We needed money. Ethan needed equipment. You can sit on literally anything and work. You're young. You'll be fine. Something inside me went very quiet in that moment. For years I had tried explaining my side, justifying my spending, gently reminding them of everything I contributed. None of it ever stuck. But standing there, listening to my mother talk about a chair I bought with my own paycheck like it was community property, she could cash out for Ethan's next hobby, I realized talking was over. You didn't share it, I said calmly. You sold it. And you didn't need money. You needed my money again. Her jaw tightened. Don't start, Lauren, she warned. We're all under pressure. You know how expensive everything is, and Ethan is trying to build something. He needs support. There it was again. That word. Support. Always flowing one way. I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. Everything is expensive. That's why some of us have been paying more than our share for years. Her eyes narrowed. What is that supposed to mean? I walked to the counter, pulled out my phone, and opened the notes app I'd been updating for months. I scrolled, then turned the screen toward her. This is what I mean. Rent, utilities, groceries, subscriptions, Ubers, Ethan's course, his gear, half the things you don't even remember asking me to cover. I watched her eyes jump across the numbers, her mouth pressing into a thin line. That can't be right, she said weakly. That's exaggerated. Those totals are insane. Things were tight, but not that tight. I tapped the screen. Screenshots, bank statements, receipts. It's all there. You can check every line if you want. Ethan wandered into the doorway halfway through, a controller still in his hand. What's going on? He asked. Is this about the chair? Mom, I told you she'd freak out. She's so dramatic about everything. I turned to him. You think I'm being dramatic? You sold my chair so you could buy a microphone for your TikTok videos. A microphone I'm sure you expect me to help pay for when something goes wrong. He rolled his eyes. Relax. It's not that deep. We're family. We share. That office was just a room. You act like you built a hospital in there. A sharp, humorless laugh escaped me. You're right, I said. It was just a room. A room where I work the job that's been keeping this family afloat while you play influencer, and Mom pretends we can afford everything because magic money shows up every month. Mom stepped in, her voice rising. That's enough, Lauren. You're being disrespectful. We're all doing our best. Ethan is trying to find his path. You've always been the responsible one. You can handle more. That's just how it is. There it was. The script. You can handle more, which really meant you will handle more because we don't want to. My face went cold. No, I said. That's how it used to be. She frowned. What are you talking about? I slipped my phone back into my pocket, suddenly done with the conversation. I'm talking about the fact that I'm moving out this weekend. The room went completely still. For a moment, I thought they hadn't heard me. Then Mom laughed, short and disbelieving. Don't be ridiculous. You can't just move out. Where would you even go? You know how expensive rent is. You're not thinking straight. Ethan snorted. Sure you are, he muttered. You're mad about a chair, so you're going to run away and make everything worse. I looked between them, strangely calm. You pushed me out of my office without a second thought. You sold my furniture without asking. You took my money, my time, my energy like it was owed, and you never once asked what would happen if I stopped giving it. I have somewhere to go. I have a lease. I'm moving my bed and the rest of my stuff on Saturday. Mom's face shifted from disbelief to anger to something that looked a lot like fear. You can't do this to us, she said quietly. We need you here. You help with everything. You know we depend on you. I nodded. I know. That's why I'm doing it. Because as long as I stay, nothing changes. Ethan scoffed. You're just trying to punish us. You'll come back. You always do. Maybe that had been true before. Not this time. I walked past them, went upstairs, and closed my door before they could say anything else. I sat on the edge of my bed, opened my phone, and pulled up the U-Haul app. My thumb hovered for half a second. Then I chose the date, the time, the truck size. When the confirmation came through, terror and relief washed over me at the same time. Downstairs, I could hear Mom and Ethan arguing in low voices, muffled by the floorboards. For once, I didn't try to listen. They had made their decision the moment they chose his ring light over my chair, his studio over my office. I was just finally making mine. Saturday came faster than I expected. All week, Mom acted like my announcement was just a heat-of-the-moment outburst. She kept saying things like, "Once you cool off, we'll talk about rearranging the basement," or, "We can get you a new chair eventually," like a replacement chair could erase what she'd done. Ethan mostly avoided me, except for a few passive-aggressive comments about how I was going to ruin everything because I caught feelings over furniture. I didn't explain myself again. I just worked, packed, and watched the clock. Saturday morning, the U-Haul pulled up right on time, the bright orange logo glaring against our block of old brick houses. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment with the keys in my hand, aware of neighbors peeking through curtains. Mom opened the door with a brittle smile, like she still thought she could talk me out of it. "You really rented a truck," she said. "You're being so extreme. You have no idea how hard life is out there." I carried the first box straight past her without answer. My mattress, dresser drawers, clothes, the cheap lamp I liked, all the things I'd intentionally left so they'd notice when they disappeared. The house felt strangely quiet. No music from Ethan's speakers, no TV, just my footsteps and furniture scraping against wood. At one point, I went into the kitchen, pulled a sheet of printer paper from the drawer, and sat at the table where we'd eaten hundreds of takeout dinners I paid for. At the top, I wrote in big letters, "What Lauren has paid for in the last 12 months. Then I listed rent with exact amounts, electricity and gas when Mom came up short, phone plans, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, groceries, delivery orders, Ethan's $600 creator course, ring lights, tripods, must-have accessories, Ubers for Mom when she didn't want the subway, Ubers for Ethan for interviews and networking events he never followed through on." Next to each category, I wrote the yearly total, then drew a line and added it up. 18,600 and change. I stared at the number. That was almost a full year of rent at my new place. I grabbed a magnet and slapped the paper onto the fridge where it couldn't be missed. Mom walked in as I stepped back. "What is this?" she asked, reaching for it. I moved faster and flattened my hand over the page. "You can read it," I said. "You just can't take it down." Ethan wandered in behind her, yawning like it was any other Saturday. His eyes flicked from the truck outside to the paper. Mom's face drained as she scanned the numbers. "This is exaggerated," she muttered. "You're making it sound worse than it was. Nobody asked you to do all this." I laughed quietly. "You didn't have to ask. Every time you said you were short this month or asked me to put something on my card and you'd pay me back, that was you asking. You just never followed through." Ethan frowned at his name. "You didn't have to put my stuff on there. You're trying to embarrass me." I shook my head. My phone buzzed a few times with texts from friends, a notification from my bank about the U-Haul charge, and nothing at all from my family. The silence felt strange, almost eerie, but it also felt like proof that I was finally on my own. I slept on a mattress on the floor, exhausted but lighter than I'd felt in years. The next morning, my phone vibrated so hard it nearly slid off the nightstand. When I picked it up, the lock screen was flooded with missed calls from Mom and Ethan, dozens of notifications stacked on top of each other. For a split second, my old instincts kicked in. Something must be wrong. Someone must be hurt. I opened the messages. The first text from Mom was short. "Call me." Then came, "You changed the passwords. We can't log into anything. The internet bill is due and it's higher than I thought. Please fix this. Then we can't afford this without you. Please answer your phone." Ethan's messages were more frantic and less polite. "Bro, the Wi-Fi is out. I can't stream. Did you kill it on purpose? Then seriously, Lauren, this isn't funny. Mom is freaking out. We can't pay all these bills without you. My phone started ringing again, Mom's name flashing across the screen, the vibration filling my little studio. I sat there staring at her name, at Ethan's messages stacked underneath it. For years, every time that phone lit up with their crisis, I dropped everything. I answered during meetings, on dates, even when I was sick, because if I didn't, everything fell apart. This time, I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. Then it rang again, and I let it. I set the phone face down, took a breath, and made myself a cup of coffee while it buzzed. They pushed me out of my own office like I was optional, like my work and my boundaries didn't matter. Less than 24 hours later, they were begging me back because they were finally feeling the cost of that choice. If you've ever wondered what happens when the person holding everything together finally stops picking up the phone, this was only the beginning. The calls didn't slow down after that morning. If anything, they came in waves. I let most of them go to voicemail. Old me would have answered on the first ring, already reshuffling my budget in my head. New me saw their names, felt the spike of anxiety, and put the phone face down again. I still read the texts. Curiosity is stubborn. Mom swung between guilt and anger. One minute it was, "I can't believe you'd do this to your own family." The next, "I'm sorry, I'm just overwhelmed, please call me, I don't know how we're going to make it." Ethan's messages were a mix of complaints and entitlement. "You really killed the Wi-Fi. You ruined my stream. Then at least fix the accounts so we can downgrade." I drank my coffee, logged into work, and let their emergencies stay theirs. My days in Queens were boring in the best way. I woke up, made breakfast in silence, worked through my UX tasks, took walks when I needed air, cooked simple dinners, and went to bed without anyone asking for my card number at 11:30 at night. A few days in, Mom left a voicemail that sounded different. Her voice was smaller, not sharp. "Lauren, I know you're angry," she said. "I know you think we don't appreciate everything you did. Maybe you're right. But the gas company is threatening to shut us off, and I didn't realize how much was in your name. We're behind. I don't know what to do. It's getting cold. Please." I felt that familiar tug in my chest, but I didn't call back right away. For the first time, I let them sit with the mess. New York answered her before I did. The temperature dropped hard. A couple of nights later, my phone lit up again and something in me said, "Pick up." I answered on the third ring. Mom's voice came through fast and panicked. "The heat is out," she said. "The furnace stopped working. The repair guy says it'll be at least $400 just to get it running. We have nothing. We're overdrawn. We can't afford this. Please, I don't know what to do." Old me would have already been opening my banking app. Instead, I took a breath. "Did you call the gas company to set up a payment plan?" I asked. She hesitated. "No. You always handle those things." "Exactly." I stared at the wall. "Mom, I'm not moving back there," I said. "I didn't ask you to move back," she snapped, then her voice cracked. "I'm asking you to help. We're cold. Do you want something to happen to me?" Ethan shouted in the background. "Come on, Lauren, this is serious. Mom's freezing. Do you really not care?" There it was, the guilt hook they'd always used, the one that worked every time before. I heard it, felt it, and didn't grab it the same way. "I'll help once," I said, "but not the way you think." Silence. "What does that mean?" Mom asked. "It means I'm not dropping my card and disappearing again. If I step in, there are conditions, real ones. You can say no, but if you say yes, you stick to them." Ethan scoffed. "Conditions? This is our heat, not a business deal." I ignored him. "One," I said, "I'll pay for the furnace repair this time so you don't freeze. After that, I'm off your bills completely. 2, we sit down in person and go through every dollar you make and spend and build a budget that doesn't include me as a secret line item. 3, Ethan gets a real job, real paychecks, and at least $300 a month goes toward the house. And 4, you stop treating me like 24/7 tech support and bailout. If you want advice, ask. I'm not your automatic solution anymore." Mom was quiet for a long moment. "So you're asking us to live without you," she said. "No. Iraplia. I'm asking you to live like I'm your daughter, not your bank. You can say no, but if you do, you'll figure out the heat without me." More muffled arguing on their end. When she came back, her voice sounded exhausted. "Fine," she said. "Just please get the heat fixed." I called the repair company myself, paid the deposit, and scheduled the appointment. Watching the money leave my account still stung, but this time it was part of an actual boundary, not another invisible sacrifice. The next evening, I went back to the house for the first time since I left. The air was warmer, but the tension was colder than the November wind. Mom sat at the kitchen table surrounded by unopened bills. Ethan hovered nearby with his arms crossed, like he might bolt at any second. I opened my laptop and pulled up a blank spreadsheet. Okay, I said. Income first. Mom bristled, but she started listing her hours, pay rate, average tips. I typed it all in. Then we listed the real bills. Mortgage, utilities, phone, internet, minimum payments, subscriptions. My name is Lauren Parker. I'm 28 years old, and a few nights ago my own mother put her hands on my desk and physically shoved it away from the wall, so my brother could move his camera in. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't ask. She said it calmly, like a decision that had already been approved and finalized. We're giving this room to him for his studio. You can work in the basement. My brother stood in the doorway with his arms folded, watching my monitors go dark like it was entertainment. He smirked and said, "You'll be fine down there, right? Less distraction." He said it like a joke, but he meant it. That room was my office, the space I had built piece by piece so I could work remotely as a designer and actually pay the bills that kept that house running. I looked at him, then at her, and all I said was, "Okay. No yelling. No argument." I packed my laptop, my hard drive, and a few things I could carry in one trip. I walked straight past them and down the stairs like I was heading to the basement, exactly the way they wanted. They didn't realize that when I said okay, what I really meant was I'm done. That night, I moved out quietly. I didn't just change where my desk was. I changed everything. The very next morning, the calls started. Then the texts. "We can't afford this without you. Please pick up." They called non-stop, like I was suddenly the only person on earth who knew how to keep their lives from collapsing. If you've ever wondered what happens when the person everyone takes for granted finally walks away, stay with me, because the way they begged afterward changed how I see everything. Growing up, I always knew my family was uneven, but I didn't understand how bad it was until money entered the picture. I was the kid who stayed up late finishing projects, color-coding notes, caring about grades. Ethan, my younger brother, was labeled sensitive and creative, which somehow meant the rules bent for him. When I got into a strong design program on a scholarship, my mom, Lynn, hugged me quickly in the kitchen and said, "That's great, honey. You've always been responsible." When Ethan barely passed an online class, she ordered a custom cake and posted about it on Facebook like he'd done something heroic. I learned early not to expect applause for doing things right. After college, when rent in Manhattan was basically $3,000 a month for a closet with a sink, moving back to our Brooklyn place felt like the only realistic option. I told myself it was temporary, just until I saved enough from my UX job and freelance work. What actually happened was I slowly became the household's bank, tech support, and problem solver, and nobody noticed except me. It started small. Mom's paycheck came up short one month, and the electric bill was high, so I covered it. Then the Wi-Fi got upgraded so Ethan could stream without lag, and somehow that ended up on my card. Then Netflix, Spotify, the shared phone plan, extra groceries, endless takeout we called family time. I kept telling myself it was fine, that I made more, that this is what you do for people you love. But every auto-renewal came with that tight feeling in my chest, because I knew none of them would last a week without it. When Ethan decided he was going to be a content creator, my mom announced it like a real career. She said he had potential and just needed support. Support meant I paid $600 for a TikTok course he never finished. Support meant I bought ring lights and tripods. Support meant I woke up at 2 in the morning to fix the internet during his late-night test streams. Meanwhile, the work that actually paid the bills happened quietly. I turned the small room upstairs into a real office because no one else cared. I spent my own savings on a proper desk, an ergonomic chair, a second monitor, a tablet, lighting so I didn't look exhausted on client calls. I pinned wireframes to the walls and built a real career in that space. That office was the difference between barely surviving and actually moving forward. But whenever my mom talked about it, she said, "Lauren's lucky she gets to work from home." Lucky, like it all just fell into my lap. At the same time, she talked about Ethan like he was one viral video away from saving us all. She never asked how many hours I worked. She only noticed when bills were due and somehow paid. I kept a list in my notes app, just for myself. Rent, utilities, subscriptions, groceries, takeout, Ubers for her, Ubers for Ethan. Every time I updated it, the number grew uglier. She called it family helping family. I called it bleeding quietly so they could pretend everything was fine. The worst part was they truly believed they were struggling the most. Ethan complained about how hard it was to be a creator while sitting in a room I paid to heat, scrolling through sneakers he wanted. When I finally drove away from the house for the last time, I pictured my new studio, sunlight on the floor, the key in my pocket, and I kept going. That night, I unpacked what I could, ate a cheap dinner in my tiny kitchen, and sat on the floor surrounded by half-open boxes. My phone buzzed a few times with messages from friends and a bank alert about the U-Haul charge, but nothing from my family. The silence felt strange but also like proof I was finally on my own. I slept on a mattress on the floor, sore and exhausted, but lighter than I had felt in years. The next morning, my phone vibrated so hard it almost fell off the nightstand. Missed calls from my mom and Ethan filled the screen. For a moment, my old instinct kicked in. Something must be wrong. I opened the messages. "Call me. You changed the passwords. We can't log into anything. The internet bill is due. We can't afford this without you." Ethan's messages were worse. "The Wi-Fi is out. Did you shut it off on purpose? This isn't funny." My phone rang again with my mom's name. I stared at it. For years, every time that phone rang, I dropped everything. I watched it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again and I let it. I set the phone face down and made coffee while it buzzed. They pushed me out of my own office like I was optional. And less than a day later they were begging because they finally felt the cost. The calls kept coming for days. I didn't answer. I read the texts. Mom swung between anger and guilt. Ethan complained and demanded fixes. I worked, walked, cooked simple meals, and slept without anyone asking for my card number at midnight. A few days later, my mom left a voicemail that sounded different. She said the gas company was threatening to shut off service, and she didn't realize how much was in my name. It was cold. I felt the pull, but I waited. Then one night she called again, frantic. The heat was out. The repair would be $400. They had nothing. I didn't open my banking app. I asked if she'd called the gas company for a payment plan. She hadn't. "You always handle that." Exactly. I told her I wasn't moving back and that if I helped, there would be conditions. I'd pay for the repair once. After that, I was off the bills. We'd make a real budget. Ethan would get a job and contribute. I wouldn't be their automatic solution anymore. She agreed because she had no choice. I paid for the repair, and for once it felt like a boundary instead of a sacrifice. When I went back to the house, it was warmer but tense. We sat down with a spreadsheet. For the first time, everything was visible. Income bills, spending. When Ethan said he had nothing coming in, I told him the math didn't care about his channel. Something had to change. My mom picked up more shifts. Ethan got a job. When I left, I told them I wasn't walking away from them, just from being their safety net. 6 months later, my studio felt like home. My stress was about work, not survival. I bought things just because they made my life better. My family adjusted. My mom started paying me back slowly. Ethan kept his job and eventually even sent me money for the course. The biggest change was how they treated my time. I was no longer the emergency line. Sitting in my sunlit studio, I realized my revenge wasn't punishment. It was freedom. Loving your family doesn't mean burning yourself to keep them warm. If you're the one everyone relies on and never thanks, ask yourself what would really happen if you stopped fixing everything. You might be surprised who finally learns to stand on their own.